Okay, good afternoon. I'm going to talk about conditional formatting inside an Excel worksheet and how to get it. By the end of it, we're going to have something that looks like this. We're going to have two boxes, and it's going to be conditionally formatting the highest and the lowest based on uh, what we select here. So if we choose each row, it'll show us the highest value of each row. If we were to choose both here, it would show us highest and lowest, and so that's what we're going to get to. So I've typed up instructions here, and you can, if you just want to copy this into your conditional formatting, you can do that. This is the final product right here um, in this order. So this will be the top, this will be the second, this will be the third. This is some miscellaneous information that we're going to go over in the video. So I am going to get started. I'm going to try to make it as quick as possible, but I am going to, it's a walkthrough, so hopefully we get some value out of the extra time that's going to be in this video. So with a conditional formatting, um, if we have a range of data here, what we're going to do is get rid of these real quick. So if we wanted to see the highest value here, we could come up to conditional formatting, do top percentage. As long as this is not over 100 data points, we could choose 1% and it would show us the highest data point on here. Now if it's over 100, say you have 1,000, that's where you're going to run into issues because it's going to return more than one if you wanted to just see the highest value. Also, it's not going to return the highest column, the highest rows, which is what we want to do here. This is, see, we have a people here, and we have different months, and we want to see, all right, Matt Kemp, what was his highest month? What was his lowest month? But that's one way to do it if you're just looking for like the highest value. What we're going to be looking at is the formula function. So we're going to be coming in here, new rule, use a formula. We're going to be entering a formula in here. Now, this formula bar, you see format values where this formula is true. It works on a true-false basis. So when you're entering a formula, it has to be something that returns either a true or a false. We can't have something returning a value of like, a number or whatever. So our formula is going to use three functions here other than the if statement. We're going to use the if function. We're also going to use the max and the min function, and we're going to also use the or function. So if I wanted to find the maximum value of this data set right up here, I would hit equals max, and I would choose all of this, and that would return me 226. But remember, we want a true or false value. So in order to do that, we're going to come in here, and we're going to hit next to the equal sign, we're going to hit the top left cell. That's what we're always going to want to choose. And what that's going to do is it's going to test that cell, and it's going to test all the other cells as it goes through. The conditional formatting will automatically go through and do that to each cell. So we're going to hit equals, and we want to lock these max cells by hitting F4 on the keyboard. That's going to return false. And we're going to drag this out. And so you can see this is returning false everywhere except here is true. If you had a lot, though, you'd want to quickly identify which ones are true. And so how you could do that is with conditional formatting. You come up here and highlight the cell that is equal. We can do equals to or text that contains. I'm going to do text that contains. And I'm going to hit equals true. And that's going to highlight all the ones that return true. So that's what we're going to use to troubleshoot the code. Hopefully we're not going to have any trouble with it. So to talk about how you have to do the formatting, like we just talked about up here, we have to equal top left cell and then equals again. And that's what's going to be used for the max and the min. For the OR function, you would think it would work the same way, but it's a little different. If you do it where you're saying the active cell equals either the maximum value of the range or the minimum value of the range, it's not going to work. What we have to do is we have to flip these around. So the OR statement is the first thing that we're going to have, and then inside that OR statement, we're going to have each of these testing the active cell. So OR if the active cell is the maximum value of the range, or if the active cell is the minimum value of the range. And so that's how that's going to have to be written. So with that in mind, let's go ahead and get into it. So let's say I have a data set here. I want to highlight just the top and the bottom values. And so I've created a drop-down here, and someone who's using this data could say, all right, I just want to see the highest. I'm interested in seeing the highest. I'm only interested in seeing the lowest value, or I'm interested in seeing both the highest and the lowest value. Okay, so how do you make this conditional formatting change in relation to this box here? So we have to use an if statement. And so it's going to be right down here. This is going to be the statement we're going to use. I would recommend you copy and paste it, because when you try to enter it, it's always going to be some issue that you're going to have to troubleshoot. You'll forget to lock a cell, or you'll forget to, an entire section of code. And so we're going to copy that, and if you're looking at it, I would recommend you just write it out really carefully one time onto Excel. And then once you have it written into Excel, then you can just copy paste it from Excel. If you're copy pasting from a Word document, it'll work, but there is one thing to consider. And when I copy and paste it here, I'm going to hit equals. You can see it's coming back as hashtag name. So whenever you copy from Excel, it messes up the what are these things? Air quotes, exclamation, apostrophes, whatever you call them. It messes those up. So you have to come in here and the double quotation, you have to change, just basically delete those and re-enter them. You can see they're sort of slanted here. And when I delete that and re-enter it, it does the two bunny ears. So I do that. Then I'm going to drag this out. And just to read this, so what we're saying here is we have three options in this box here. If this box is highest, so we've selected highest, then the active cell here, then we want it to this active cell to test to see if it is the maximum value of this entire range. And if it's not, if it is, then return true. And in that case, highlight that number. If it's false, then move on. And so what we're saying here is, okay, well, if that's false, then we have two other options here, lowest or both. So if that cell is the lowest, then we want it to test that active cell to see if it's the minimum. And if it is, highlight it. If not, don't highlight it. And if that's not the case, both must be selected. So we want it to test that active cell to see if it's the max or the minimum. If it is, highlight it. If not, then none of those are true, and so it'll return false. So to show how this goes into Excel here, you're going to come down here to New Rule. I'm going to delete this one right here, just to New Rule, use a formula, or copy it in. And now this is difficult because this does not like, you can't use the arrow codes on here. So I'm going to have to change these since I pasted it in from a Word document. Once you get it onto Excel, though, it should be fine. Then I'm going to format it. I'm going to choose the yellow format, hit OK, and that's highlighted them there. I come up here, I can select highest, lowest, and both. So if let's say you wanted green and red colors, right? You wanted multiple colors to indicate what's the highest and what's the lowest. So we have to split out the code. We can't do one code because with one code we can only do one color. So what we've done here is we've split this out, and it's pretty much the same, except what we're just saying here is instead of going through and saying, all right, well, if this is highest, then do this. If lowest, do this. Otherwise, do this. What we've said is this is going to be the highest number. So if this cell is highest or both, then we want it to test for the to see if it's the maximum value in the cell range. If that's the case, then return true. Otherwise, return false. Don't return anything. And down here it's the same thing, except we've changed highest to lowest and max to min. So see what this is. This is the highest one. It's already in here. I'm just going to copy and paste it over. And so how we're going to format this in here is paste that in there. We're going to choose green. And then the reverse for the minimum values. We're going to change that to lowest, this to min. We're going to make sure that D3 is locked. You do that by hitting F4. And then we'll make sure the entire range is locked as well, so that it's not moving as it goes along. I'm going to choose red there. And then this is highest, so we're going to change this to both, and that should light it up. There you go. That's the lowest value of the data set, and that's the highest value of the data set. And those are in different colors. So on the final piece of this puzzle here, we've added a box here that allows us to analyze the data, or I should say, it's going to give us the highest and the lowest in not just the entire data, but now we can choose each row or each column. So how do you incorporate this in? So it's not that complicated. We're just adding in another drop-down box. So into this this code that we just did. So where we have the max function and we put the entire data set here, because in the prior code we were looking only at the entire data set all the time. Now that's a variable, right? That could change. We could only want to look at the row or the column. So in place of these of the entire data set, we're going to enter in this nested if statement, and logically it follows if this cell right here, D4, so our drop down, if that equals each row, so we want to look at each row of the data, then we're going to choose the B8 to M8, so that is this top row here. We're going to lock the column letters because we don't want, as this thing goes across, we don't want the letter to change. We want it to stay the same, B to M. What we do want to change is we want the number to change as it goes down. And so this is going to with each time, it's going to only analyze the data in each row. If that's not the case and we've chosen each column, then it's sort of the opposite here. We're going to have B8 to B24, which is the entire column. We've only locked the number because as it goes down, we don't want it to shift down. We want those numbers 8 to 24 to stay the same, but as it goes over, we want it to analyze just the column that it's in. So it's going to change that letter every time, or that letter every time it goes over. And then if that is not the case, if neither of those are true, then we're going to look at the entire data set again. So those are B8 to N24, and both of those are locked so that they don't move. So you can sort of see this here. Finding duplicates. This is what you would enter if you wanted to do it a solo function. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to write this out just to try to, it's the only one I'll write out here. So we're going to start with the if statement, and we're going to say if this one up here is equal to highest, I'm sorry, let me look at the wrong one. All right, if this right here equals the highest, or if it equals both, then we want to test this active cell to see if it is the maximum value of, and then this is where we're going to enter our if statement. So, the range we want to test is dependent on this analyze thing right here. So if this is equal to each row, then we only want it to test the row here, and as it goes over, we don't want the letters to change. So we're going to lock those by hitting F4 3 times. If that's not the case, then we want it to test again to see if this is either each column or if it's entire data. So we say if this is each column, then want it to test this column here. This is a table, unfortunately. I don't know whether it works with table or not, but so I'm just going to enter this B8 to B24, and we're going to lock the numbers by hitting F4 twice, so that when it moves, it only moves side to side and not down. If that's not the case, then we want it to look at the entire data set. Again, this is a table. Look at the entire data set here, and we're going to want to lock those by hitting F4 once. We're going to close that off, and we're going to close off that if statement there. You can use the colors on these to and we're going to close them all off. So that's it. It should work, and let's see if it does. Oh, you know what I didn't do? So we're going to make sure we lock these cells as well. D3 needs to be locked completely by hitting F4 once. D4 also needs to be locked by hitting F4 once. And no changes there, so that anyway, hopefully that walkthrough helps. So what we're going to do is we're going to copy this down. We're going to come up here to conditional formatting. Come to new rule, formula. We're going to paste this in. We're going to choose green. Then we're going to do the same for the lowest values. We're going to change that highest to lowest there, and then we're also going to have to change the max function to the minimum function. We're going to choose red for this one. We're going to apply that. And now this should work. And there we go, let's change in there. How you can test it is if you come down here and see we've chosen each row. So let's say we want to count if down here. Want this to count this entire thing and count the ones that are true. So you can see all of these have 1 except for this one right here, which has 2. And so what we're going to talk about duplicates in a minute, but first you want to make sure that nothing's wrong with the formula. I'm going to come up here and see, all right, because if this was a different number, then something's wrong. But you can see these are duplicates, so that means that it's going to highlight if there are duplicates and both of these are the highest number in row, then it's going to highlight both of them. So we have to have a way to determine when someone's looking at this, we want them to be able to see that this is, yes, this was the highest number for the year, but it also tied November for the highest number. We want them to be able to tell that by looking at April. So, but anyway, this should be able to tell you. And then let's change it for each column. And we'll do count if. We got ones all the way across there, so we should be good. So to find duplicates, these are the functions that we're going to use. So you can see here it's just a COUNTIF, and we've selected the range that we want to test right here, and then the active cell is greater than 1. And you can see this changes if we want to look at the entire one. We're doing the entire one. If we want to do the row, we're going to do B8 to M8 with locking the letters, and then for the columns, B8 to B24, locking the numbers. So then we just take all these and we put it into an if statement. So based on what is selected in the analyze. So if D4 equals each row, then we're going to do the row right here. If D4 is equal to each column, we're going to do the column right down here. And if it's neither of those, then it must be the entire thing, and so we're going to do the entire thing. That's going to, same function is going to return true on those settings. We'll come into here and we're going to copy that in there. Now how we're going to format this, come over to format, and these are what's available to us. So I have to find a way in these tools to tell us. So what I've done is I've just said I'm going to bold everything, and I'm going to double underline it as well. I feel like that should be sufficient. So let's see, what did this do? And now what we're going to do is So you can see this is selected on each column here, and it's highlighted these two because these are the same. If we were to change one of these to, let's say, 5 and 5, it would then highlight those. And if we want to change this to each row, it would then highlight those. So you can see up here, this was the issue we had where it was returning true on those high values. So let's see. Yeah. So this is indicated here. It's bolded it and double underlined it. So if you were looking at this, you would know, like, okay, this is the highest value, but there's another one that's tied. So in here, you could probably tell with this small data, but if you had a large amount of data that you were looking at, maybe it went off the screen. This could be something that would help you make sure that you're not missing something. So that's a quick walkthrough of how I was able to do it. And again, here is the codes, and if you're write these into Excel, it's probably the easiest thing to do. Hope this helps. Have a good day. Another thing I wanted to discuss, forgot to mention, is how to change the colors on these. So you can see these colors are there, and that's fine if you want to leave those colors like it is, but you can also come in here and under conditional formatting, you can change these to make them look, I think, just a little more professional. So you come in here to format, and under format you're going to come to fill effects, and then this is where you can choose your color. We're going to choose that color right there, and then you can choose a shading style. So I'm going to choose diagonal down. So I'll play around with these, figure out which one you like. But hit OK here and apply. You can see it sort of changes the shading and just makes it look a little nicer, I think. Format, fill effects. There you go, and you can darken those up a little bit if you wanted to. But anyway, just another little tip, and that's all I got. So hope you have a good day.